We're up to Pasuk Yud. Last week we learned the tzava of David, and this week we learned Vayishkav David im avaisav, that David passed away im avaisav with his avais. This is a message to us that just like his father Yishai died as a tzaddik, that when he died also was nimchalai al oisei aven of Bathsheba, he died im avaisav vayikaver, and he was buried be'ir David, in Ir David, which, as we saw in the beginning of Sefer Shmuel Beis, Ir David, that's Har Tzion, and that's where David was buried. If you go today to Eretz Yisrael and you visit Har Tzion, they take you to what is believed to be Kever David. It's a kever which is decorated with many Kisrei Sefer Torah, and that's believed to be the kever of David. It's not at all clear that that is actually the kever of David. We don't have any Kabbalah. As a matter of fact, in the Mayadim Uzmanim, Chelik Beis, Simin Kuf Pei Hey, he writes, Ein Shum Hechrach Klal, that is the kever of David. However, that location, Har Tzion, although today it's outside of the wall of the old city, we learned back in Sefer Shmuel that actually the city of Yerushalayim extends further to the south than the wall of the old city that we see today. And originally, Har Tzion was certainly part of Yerushalayim. And we have a rule which Rashi brought in this week's Parsha in Bechukaisai, that Ein Malinin Meis B'Yerushalayim, no mace was buried in Yerushalayim, or was even left overnight, Chutz, with the sole exception of Malchei Beis David and Chulda Hanaviyah, were the only ones that were buried in Yerushalayim. And being that there is a grave on Har Tzion, there is a Kvura, which is, by its style, a Kever Yisrael, a Jewish burial place. So that is the indication that that kever has to be either the burial place of Chulda Hanaviyah or of one of the 10 Malchei Beis David that were buried in Yerushalayim proper. And that's the reason that today it's still considered a Mokim Tefillah. In the Sefer Ir HaKodesh VaHamikdash, he points out that David, Shlomo, and Chizkiah, 3 of the 4 greatest kings of Yisrael, were buried side by side. And if you go to Har Tzion, to the kever, there is a Messiah apparently that it's the kever of David. It's in a ma'ara, it's in a cave which is not large enough for 3 people to be buried. So Rav Tukachinsky writes, Al Pizani Mishayer, based on this, I would have to estimate that burial spot is one of 2 things. Either it's one of the other 7 kings that was buried in Yerushalayim proper, or that's just an entranceway, it's covering an entranceway to go to a deeper cave which has within it the burial place of David and the other kings. So while it's likely that that particular kever on Har Tzion is a place of Kedusha, a place where a great person is buried, it's probably very close to the kever of David, but that actual spot where apparently somebody was buried is not necessarily a kever of David himself. It might be a kever of one of his children or his grandchildren. Josephus writes that when David was buried, a great amount of money was buried with him. Not as lahavdil, many of the Goyish kings who buried money because they wanted to take it with them, but because David left in his tzava to be buried with an amount of money which, if Jews should ever find themselves in trouble, that they should be able to come to his kever and to take that money for use. Josephus writes that Hurdis took money from there many centuries later when he came to fix up the Har HaBayis, to expand and extend the Har HaBayis. He funded it in part with the money that he took from Kever David. He doesn't say if he took all the money or he left some behind. In Yitzhak Hashem, in 6 weeks, I hope to be at that spot. If I find any money, I'll let you know. That'll show that it's Kever David. V'hayamim asher malach David al Yisrael arboim shana. The days that David served as king were 40 years. V'chevra malach Hashem.